In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways. Moya light, Moya bright. Welcome back to another episode of Moya Political Series, where we bring you guys the guests who are going to make you say the smart things in class. Remember, we went to that workshop for entrepreneurships out in Soweto. There was a lot that we learned from there. So we thought, let us bring the owner of those workshops to come break down what is the story of entrepreneurs in the Black community. So we're going to have a session today where we unpack the history from way back, hopefully pre-Apartheid, to see how the laws affected entrepreneurs. Obviously, we can't all be employees of white capital monopoly. So let's find ways to build ourselves. Today we have Dr. THAMI MAZWAI, who's going to break down the journey of the entrepreneur in Soweto. Enkosi kakhulu Tata for making time to be with us.
Yes, you're welcome.
So can we start? Thank you for the book, first of all. It's so inspiring. And I just want us, because we live in a generation that prefers to consume content looking at it and listening to it, then they don't really read, our children. So I think it will be easier if you just let us know what's in the book. Maybe we start from the beginning, because you know the journey of entrepreneurship, and I can just...
All I can do is to provide first the context of entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship is a human activity. Whenever human beings get together, their social structure, in terms of their social structurations and so on, entrepreneurship is part and parcel of it, because no two families are self-sufficient. So you'll find that this family is good in this, the other one is good in that, particularly in terms of agricultural products and other day-to-day needs. As Maslow said, it's food, shelter, and clothing. So human beings are not self-sufficient in terms of those aspects of life, which are the basics. So some will have and some will not have. And on that basis, then they will those who don't have are an opportunity for those who have. And that really is the basis of entrepreneurship. So barter is a face of entrepreneurship. So African communities, even before the white men came, were thus normal communities where there was barter, and therefore there was entrepreneurship. So there is, so a lot of people are mistaken in thinking that entrepreneurship was a result of colonialism and so on. It was not. Entrepreneurship is part and parcel of any community, whether it's in Iceland, whether it's in the North Pole, South Pole, Africa, Asia, or wherever. So as long as people form a community, there are those who are going to provide certain services, and then there are those who are going to consume certain services and pay for those services in one form or the other. So, and just to make a final example, I mean, in the village setup, you'll find that there is what we call the traditional doctor, where people go to with perhaps emotional or even physical problems. He's going to charge them something. He doesn't give the service for free. And that's entrepreneurship and so on. So it's not something that we should say it came with colonialism.
As strong entrepreneurship being formally employed and the era we're living in now, can we compare the two, and what's better?
No, I think that, you can't compare the two, because societies are always evolving. societies, whether they are in whatever part of the world, globe, they're always evolving, moving from one phase to the next. So our evolution as a society was unfortunately impacted by colonialism. So that colonialism then came now. When the colonialists were on the continent and also in our country, they had to make sure that they hold the upper hand in everything that we do. And that's why they even changed our languages, and there was a new orthography, because they wanted language is a very critical component of identity. So if now somebody gives you a language or controls your language, then that person has got control over you. So that's why then apartheid then had what we call the new orthography in terms of our languages, because all that they were concerned about was to control us. And secondly, the second thing was that you had to reduce the initiativeness, the people in that community being initiative. And entrepreneurship is one avenue of people who are very initiative. They are the people who are going to be dealing with the needs of society, providing solution. It's part of, some of them are entrepreneurs. So that's why then, that the powers that be then suppressed entrepreneurship in the black communities, because it was not only a question of control, to make sure that they control us, but it was also making sure that the white people have got a monopoly in terms of creating wealth. And that was the logic behind the suppression of colonialism, of entrepreneurship in communities. A blatant example of this was the Land Acts, 1913. I think there were three of them there. One of the reasons for the Land Acts was really that the white farmers were getting tough competition from the black farmers. So the black farmers who have been in that area, in those areas for decades, knew the terrain far better than the white farmers. So they were far better farmers. They could manage the changes in the weather patterns much more than the colonial farmers. And so you just had to deal with that situation. And then there were the Land Acts. Of course, there were other reasons for the Land Acts, but this is but one aspect from my research in terms of the Land Acts. So all efforts were used then to suppress entrepreneurship in the black communities, because you have to make sure that these people are continually dependent on the white master. Then they become just consumers, and they become laborers. They must come to us for jobs and not be the people who provide jobs. And that was the logic. So that's the background then.
For the audience here, because it's a young audience, and what has happened is that in my generation, Abelung have managed to erase a lot of the history and how we actually got here. So they might not understand, but how Land Act, what are you talking about? So can you give us what used to happen before? How were we trading before? And then Abelung bafika, and then Batini, and then for us to end up in townships in the end, where you're saying we don't control anything.
Well, I thought, I had given, I'd sort of given the background, but it was during an era of industrialization, and the industrialization was global, and it was also in South Africa, because there had been the discovery of the discovery of minerals, and so on. So you had then to also you then, after the Land Acts, were also a way of really
They don't know
ensuring.
what the Land Acts are, Bantwana bit.
The Land Acts are the laws that were passed. I think it was the 1913 and I think it was 1936. I'm not sure with the and so on. These Land Acts were the takeover of land by the colonialists, who said, now you blacks no longer own this land. We, as the new white government, or the Transvaal government, or the Free State government, or whatever, or the South African government, now own this land. And this was really after the Land Act came after Union. The Union of South Africa, I think, was in 1909 and 1910. So now there was one central government, white government, and that white government is the one that passed the Land Acts, taking away land from black communities. And that sort of land robbery continued over the over the ages. Also now with the creation now to say that you blacks, you've got to move away from these areas. You've got your own areas, whether it's the Transkei, the Ciskei, Gazankulu, Liboa, Venda, KZN, and Bophuthatswana, and so on. So it was that rollout of the apartheid legislation. And that rollout then was, in terms of, was based on what was known as the Stallard principle at the time, which said that blacks are in the white area solely as providers of labor.
Wow.
So then the townships then were created because then it was quite obvious that these townships, these industrial areas, Johannesburg, Springs, Welcome, and many others, were going to need labor, and the mining houses, the hostels, could not accommodate all the blacks in the areas, and there were a lot of them in informal settlements. And the white community was sort of resentful of these informal settlements because there was the fear of disease, and in case there were a breakout of diseases in these informal settlements, because they were very unhygienic. So then the government of the day then created the townships, primarily as hostels for this labor, but not as residential. But very soon they realized that it was a pipe dream, because then they became residential because people had to have families. Then Orlando became the first residential township when it was established. So when those townships then were established, it's there now that blacks were together. So that's where then now some of the people there, because they had no jobs, then started now being providers of this and that. And because there was no accommodation, some of the families would let out a room. People must pay to use that room and so on. So the whole question of letting rooms is an old industry in our communities, because there was always a demand for accommodation, just as there is still a demand for accommodation up to this day. So, so then in the townships, then the pioneers of entrepreneurship then emerged. People like Mweli, Scotta, and one must mention that during this time it was also the early days of the South African Native National Congress. So that ANC also then had as its agenda the economic development of the black people. So people like Sisulu, Walter Sisulu, that we know, he was part and parcel of that core of ANC leaders who were in stimulating entrepreneurship in the black community. People like Mweli Scotta, who was the Transvaal president of the ANC, also was.
You keep mentioning Babu Willie Scott. Who was he? What did he do?
He was one of the top African entrepreneurs of the time. He was a publisher. He was involved in quite a lot of things, and so on.
Okay.
And he was a Transvaal president of the I think the Transvaal president of the ANC, and then there were others, almost Sibia, and then who were
So
the
who are
first
some of the
entrepreneurs.
prominent figures and the prominent families, and which industries did they take shape?
Well, you can't talk of industries. What you can talk of, I mean, retail was the main activity because they had to provide the foods, they had to provide clothing, they had to provide the day-to-day needs of the communities in the townships. And that's how then the entrepreneurs emerged.
I think for now, like my Moya, where do they come from? What are the contexts that they're coming from?
Well, I mean, all of them have got unique. You see, an entrepreneurship operates in that way, that you identify an opportunity in the environment. So it's not a mass activity, it's an individual activity. So you see that, man, there is a need. And that is the basis of the workshops that we're having with the youth, to say, if you look around in your community, you'll find that there is a need for something. And that need might just be your opportunity for you to provide, to fill that gap. And in that way, you'd have started your own business. It will obviously not give you the millions that you dream of, but it's a starting point to reach that destination of the millions and so on.
What do you think are some of our pitfalls? Because you're saying that you're doing workshops with the youth to get them into entrepreneurship. What's some of the pitfalls? Because we're trying to, the reason we're asking about where we're coming from as entrepreneurs is because nathi silapha ngoku and akukho msebenzi, and that's the main issue. So a lot of us are having to hustle and find ways.
Yeah, well, that's why I am talking to unemployed youths, because I'm saying, look, you just don't have to be weeping over your shoulders, having meetings to blame government and so on. At the end of the day, you are responsible for your own. You are responsible for your own day-to-day survival, and there is, and you've just got to use your brains to say, what is it that I can do to live on a day-to-day basis? Same like the entrepreneurs emerged in 1905, in 1906, because Soweto was founded in 1905. And in the years that followed, then that's when those entrepreneurs emerged. Now, when they emerged to supply this, they were very unwelcome. They were very unwelcome. They were not encouraged by the government of the day. Today, the government of the day wants entrepreneurs. It provides support. It provides the loans. It provides grants. It has created institutions like the NYDA that are now giving support to entrepreneurs, whether they are youths or whether they are women or whether they are people with a disability. But during those days, they had to fight. They had to fight. And that's why then they formed Traders Association. They were the earliest of this was the Orlando Traders Association, which then brought together the traders of Orlando to say, how do we deal with our day-to-day challenges? How do we buy together so that we can get better discounts and so on? And that is the journey that has been traveled by entrepreneurs in any other part of the world. And ours were also treading that road. Because even when in societies where entrepreneurship is stimulated, people are still going to have challenges. Entering to markets is not is not the Sunday school drive, and so on. No, you fight to get into any market. You fight, and so on, and that's why the girls are separated from the women, and the boys are separated from the men, because the people then who are able to get into these markets, then they display certain qualities. And those are what today we know as entrepreneurial qualities, like resilience, like being patient, like being persistent, like being willing to take risks, and so on. And those are, and very few people, have got that stamina, have those qualities.
It's not an easy one, eh?
It's not an easy road, but a lot of other people have traveled that road. Maponya traveled it. Maponya started with a dairy, delivering milk, and so on. And when he died, where was he? He was one of the top names in our country. And there were others, about David Power. When our group, I don't know, in West End, there was about Tim Power. Everywhere, these guys were just there. And some of them were working for these organizations in a town, and all of a sudden he says, no, I can do this on my own. And he opens a little outlet in Soweto. And they're to fight against the tremendous odds, because they could only provide, their shops were only allowed to provide the daily necessities. So they could only have butcheries, bakeries.
What? So there were laws that prohibited what black people can sell?
Yeah, that determined. When now the government had accepted that there are going to be black entrepreneurs, whether we like it or not, then they said, but they must only do this. So that's what happened. And also they could not own more than, there was a law that said one man, one door. So you could not have a bakery here and have a butchery there. No, you either have a butchery or you have a bakery. So the associations then were there to fight for the repeal of all this discriminatory legislation. And this is the road that our pioneers traveled, and that's why I believe that it was an important part of history that is critical for our young people to know, so that they can draw inspiration from these entrepreneurs, from these pioneers, and say, if Sibia could brave such discrimination, why can't I at least respond to a government that is trying to give me all the support, to give me some form of support? But what we have got to understand, that the government provides support, it is not the entrepreneur. Now, a lot of problems, I find that our people expect the government to spoon-feed them. Entrepreneurs are not spoon-fed. Entrepreneurs feed themselves. They find opportunities. And when they go to government, they say, ngishota ngalo, ngishota ngalo, ngishota ngalo. And then government gives them lento abashota ngayo. When they say, look, I can't have capital, I don't have money, then government provides a Gauteng enterprise proper that is going to give you the loan that you need. The government provides an NYDA that is going to give you the loan that you require. Not only will the NYDA give you the loan, it will also give you a grant to say, well, this is to encourage you, and so on, to buy raw material or to buy capital equipment. The Department of Small Business Development has got such a support for equipment through the NIBAS, informal business upliftment support, and so on. So our government is doing whatever it can, but it's the people themselves on the ground who are not taking the necessary challenges, who are not doing the necessary things, who are not going to say, who are not saying that I'm jumping into the pool, come rain, come shine. And that is what the workshops are about.
I think we didn't have the information. Because even now, I'm like, oh, are there things for us too? Because we're struggling with cash flow. We're struggling,
Well, I think that, for instance, I've been doing these workshops with African Bank, the latest round of workshops, I started with Sanlam. Now doing them with African Bank. And African Bank is an ideal partner because African Bank then also provides loans. It also provides some various forms of enterprise development support, particularly to young entrepreneurs. So at least now, African Bank is making sure by sponsoring the workshops that young people are aware of these opportunities.
I wanted to ask him, because you were talking about these barriers into entry that the white government created back then.
Yeah.
When I look at our generation now, you can't be a successful entrepreneur unless there's a white face somewhere behind, somewhere, somehow. Is that, am I seeing things, or can we, where can we point to where we can see, like even earlier on you said there's no black industries. So is it because Abelungu give that one person a little bit, or how do we interpret that?
No. The issue is that some blacks will go with a white partner because the white partner has been in the game for quite some time, so he brings in the necessary knowledge that is required. When I formed my Fube Publishing, I had when it started, there was George Williams, and he provided invaluable insight. But unfortunately, I was this. I had my own views about that. Now, blacks must do it on their own, and so on. And I decided to part with George Williams, and unfortunately, I paid a heavy price because he knew the ropes, because the people who are already in the sector do not welcome you as a new entrant because you are going to take away part of the profit from them. You're going to take away their clients. So that's why entry is difficult, because the incumbents they make sure that they block you out because you're coming to take their market and so on. So I made the mistake then of parting with George Williams, and in a number of, and in a few years, I think 2 years,
Sure.
a couple of years, I was, and then I ultimately had to close doors. But I know that if I had not parted with George, I would have gone places as
Are
a
you saying
publisher.
that we need white people?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm saying that it's an advantage to have a knowledgeable person.
Whatever color they are.
Whatever color they are. And there are knowledgeable black people now, because we've had 30 years of democracy. Yesterday, I listened to Buhle Anise. She was talking, at some function at Tebe Investment Corporation. And it's quite clear that we've got young women of an intellectual clout who are now providing the necessary knowledge.
But are we owning? Are we owning as abantu abamnyama, because sifunde ezikolweni zabelungu, and then now we can articulate ourselves, and it's bahle, and we've cleaned up, we're sophisticated. Are we really flourishing as entrepreneurs and independent owners? Do we own the means of production? Are we owning, or is it just a facade?
Well, I think that the whole question of ownership, we'll have to unpack it. Not necessarily today, but as a journey, the more our people become entrepreneurial, the more our people starting their own, having their own value chains on the ground, the more they will be able to be the major players in the economy, and actually, own parts of the of the business world. But that is not something that that comes to you overnight and so on. It's a journey that we must travel as a community. The same way whatever we can say about the Afrikaners, they built the biggest and strongest economy on the continent. And they built that economy regardless of the sanctions campaign and so on. So, yes, apartheid was terrible, but and also these people also excelled in other respects and so on. Yes, they also have, they were underpaying us and so on. Perhaps that was that benefited them and so on. But overall, our economy is still the most modern on the continent, and it is because of the work that was done by Afrikaner, the Afrikaner capitalist. Denomira, who's a historian, states this very well when the Afrikaners had a conference after taking over as the government from Jan Smuts, where they had a conference, and then they said, we can be in power, but if the economy is not in our hands, we are not in power. Now, that has not been the case with us. And having the economy in our hands is not a question of us getting 5% and 10% of that. It's a question of building institutions from the ground, like Sanlam was built, like ABSA was built as Volksgas, like Old Mutual was built from the ground. We also have got to do and produce more Patrice Mutsepes, if I may, more Herman Mashabas, who built that brand of his, Black Like Me. And there are many other blacks who have built institutions from the ground. And we've got to have more black people build those institutions from the ground, because as we build from the ground, the more we become proud of ourselves, because we are now able to create this strong and viable economy that is going to drive our country into a greater heights.
I think I still get lost where, like even Abu Herman Mashaba, the examples, Konabelung there. So when you say, because even Abu folks, Abu Absa and them, they built their economy off our backs, basically. And we are not able to build our economy off other races' backs because of Rainbow Nation. So then how are we going to, if the economy is still in the same hands, so then how?
No, I think that when you say in the same hands, we cannot really give an impression that now all of a sudden there is an invisible hand that is Africa, that is white, capital hand, that is running things. No, what we inherited were a lot of white industrialists, white entrepreneurs who had this and the other thing. And our job is to bring forth our own black entrepreneurs who must be creators of this and that. And I think that we are, at least they are coming forth, but not at the rate at which, one would hope for. If at all you look at the number of young people now who are into the fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, who are running businesses in the townships, you can see that that we've got we've got some courageous young people in the townships, but the numbers are not enough. And secondly, as I've said, they are not building value. We are not building value chains in the townships. The minute that we start building value chains, when we buy from each other, when our stockfiles now suddenly focus more on wealth creation, focus more on economic development, because our stockfiles, unlike the stockfiles of other nations, our stockfiles plan for Christmas, that they must be able to buy food for Christmas or pay school fees in the new year, or put together that money so that he must buy a new car and so on. Now, if at all those resources, stockpile, because it's billions that can now be redirected to assisting entrepreneurs on the ground with the appropriate agreements, would go places. I can tell you that, because it's those stockpiles are the ones that supported the pioneers of entrepreneurship in Soweto and in other townships of our country.
In your workshops, so then do you equip the entrepreneur?
Intellectually, mentally.
Because
mine is to strengthen the mind of the individual. And when the mind of the individual says, no, I must, because self-efficacy, as it's technically called, is the most critical component of entrepreneurship. Once you don't have belief in yourself, and belief in yourself is not something that you inherit, as just simply inherit. It's something that also comes with the type of communities that your history and so on. So that belief in self, that confidence in self is absolutely critical. And that is what my workshops are contributing to. They are saying to the unemployed youth, you can do it. That's all. Then the NYDA, GAP, and CEDA can take over, because they have got the resources to hold the hands of these young people. All I'm concerned with the mind, what is called self-efficacy, that self-confidence that is critical for anybody to be a successful entrepreneur. That pride, that faith, that belief in oneself.
Would you say for your workshops then, is it for people, is it only for young people first of all, and then is it for people who've already got businesses, or is it for people who want to get into business? What would you suggest?
Well, it's for people who want to get into business. Okay. It's for young people who are unemployed, and it's for startups, people who have just started on the road. And then, because I deal with the mind and so on, all I'm doing, I'm telling the person that you can do it. You can do it. And that's what the workshops are about. You can do it.
And then you also provide the tools like body business plan, PR,
yes.
And all the
yes, we give
elements.
We give the person the idea of the tools that are necessary. For instance, one of my presenters will do on how you structure your business plan. And then the other presenter then deals with financial management, because that financial management is critical, whether you are an entrepreneur or not. Because as human beings, we always bite off more than we can chew. It's a human shortcoming. It's not a black thing. Human beings are like that. You always find yourself biting off more than what you can chew.
I'm going to put your details so that people can reach out to you for the workshops. I'm assuming that you're going to move around the country.
Yes, we will. We have our last workshop for this year tomorrow. Okay. So the best thing, is to young people who are interested. Then they can just send their names to us, and then all that they must do is send their emails to info@mtia.co.za. I'll repeat, info at mtiya.co.za.
Okay, and that's where they can get all the details for
They
everything.
just send us that they want to be part of the workshops, and then I'll take it from there.
And of course, the book is available as exclusive books.
Yeah, the book is available at Exclusive Books, and also, UNISA Press. You can just phone UNISA Press, and they will give you an idea of which exclusive books there is, because it's focused on Soweto. It's not all exclusive books that have it. But if at all, if at all it was a book about London, it will be at all exclusive
Yeah,
books.
of course. That's how I was saying good day.
But because it's about Soweto, it's not at
Yes.
all bookshops, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that with the demand,
Yes.
that people will start having it and so on.
Thank you so much. And obviously the book it's more historical.
A historical narrative.
Beautiful.
And it's also divided according to the various sectors. For instance, the history of the taxi industry is in this book.
Okay.
The history of Stockfels is in this book.
Okay.
Stockfels in Soweto. The history of all the various activities, retail.
Are they women?
Yes, there is a section for women.
Okay.
In the women entrepreneurship.
Oh wow. So who are the women?
Abo Konin Chona, those are the veterans, Esther Nyembezi.
These names.
Yes, yes. And those are the names that we should be knowing.
Yes.
Marina Maponya, Maponya's wife, was a more powerful.
What?
It was a more powerful, because not only was she giving support to her husband, but she was also respected even by the white business world. That's why she's one of the people who set up the Small Business Development Corporation, which now is Business Partners.
What?
Yes. So Marina Maponya was one of the people who, and also people don't know. And there were some, white industrialists who played quite a critical role. For instance, the Small Business Development Corporation came with Anton Rupert, who is Johann Rupert's father. Mm-hmm. So the Ruperts were very inspirational in trying to inspire, stimulate entrepreneurship in black communities. Whatever we can say about them.
That's why I kept quiet.
Whatever we can say about the Ruperts, they played a critical role in stimulating entrepreneurship for black people.
Wait, Tata, you're going to get me trouble here with the black people? Oh my God, the thing is, this book, what's inside here is so exciting. It sounds exciting. The taxi industry a little bit, because that's interesting.
Taxi Sojane, it was synonymous with Jimmy Sojane. Jimmy Sojane was a big name when it came to the taxi business. He was also secretary of Orlando Pirates, and also sports. Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, Pitfuls United Brothers, Muraka Swallows. You've got to look at them as the way they were. They provided the basis for a lot of sporting activities. The aunties who were selling food at sporting events and so on. And these are all covered here, because when people look at entrepreneurship, we always look at it in terms of the Anglo-Americans. You don't look at the ground floor, where you've got hundreds of thousands of doing this and that. And that is the basis of economic growth for any country.
I wish we could. Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Okay, you're welcome.
I'm hoping that we still can have our session where you're going to sit with the youth and have a question and answer.
No, fine. You just invite me.
I will, because you were very particular that you don't want to discuss THAMI MAZWAI, and at the last workshop you were described as the godfather of South
No.
African business.
I'm interested in unemployed youth. All that my focus is in unemployed youth, because this is talent that cannot be allowed to go to waste.
Oh, Dad, enkosi kakhulu.
Okay.
Moya will light, Moya
Okay.
bright, guys. I promise I'll bring him again. I promise you. Thank you so much to everybody who subscribed and to all the members who have joined. Thank you so much, guys, for watching the adverts, because slowly we're growing. We'll see you again next time.
Who are you when all you were has been diluted by lies and white lines cancelling out all that which has been written of your history? Why do you look at yourself as a mystery? Doesn't the sun shine because you open your eyes? Doesn't the moon stay situated within the same stars your DNA sparkles off? Your spirit knows that surely corner into e off. Buza umoya so you may return to being well off. Because spiritually you are rich, yet your ancestors cry because you are out of reach. But yours is to command all elements while God takes inspiration from the very mirror she looked at to become. Remember who you are and never finish just when they think that with you they are done.